You're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup with me, Roisin the Cleric.
And me, Paul Brophy.
And Paul, we're back on our fishing campaign again.
We are indeed Roisin, and we're joined by Patrick Murphy, who's CEO of Ireland South and Southwest Fisheries. And in today's programme, we're going to be talking about Brexit. Even though it happened in 2016, there's still a lot of um, permutations that affect our Irish fisheries. And the new trade and cooperation agreement was recently agreed between the UK and the European Union. And to tell us more about this and how it affects our fishermen, Patrick, you're very welcome to the Irish Political Roundup once again.
Good afternoon, Roisin. Good afternoon, Paul. Delighted to be with you again to bring you up to speed on what's happening in our industry.
Patrick, I suppose Brexit, it's been on a lot of
Yeah,
people's mind for a long time. Um, And there was, as I said, there was a trade and cooperation agreement that was to stay in place for 5 years, particularly in relation to our fishing industry. Now a new deal has come into place, and the effects of that is something that's a bit worrying for the Irish fishing industry.
yeah. So the trade and cooperation deal was for all trade in Europe, but in 2020 they left fishing to last. So that left us at a disadvantage. Rather than linking us to trade, we were separated. So Michel Barnier did the deal, and it was acknowledged afterwards that Ireland paid the greatest amount, the greatest burden. Of the 140 million that was paid to the UK, Ireland paid 46 million of that. So we paid the greatest amount. And we were told that it was our proximity to the UK. But we lost two big fisheries, two our most important ones. We lost 26%. We were told that the deal, the reason why we gave so much of our key stocks was because of our proximity to Europe. So we kicked up over that. We met with the Commission, our MEPs, our minister, and we told them that, this wasn't fair, this wasn't right, and we were giving up far too much. So what's happened now is that the TCA has been signed again. So it was for 5 years. That 5 years is up. It's signed again, and it's for 12 years. But unfortunately, we didn't get any rebalancing or burden sharing. So we've been stuck with this bad deal for another 12 years. Now, the upside we were told was that it meant stability. So at least we knew what we had got, we were going to keep. The access we had, we were going to keep. And that was a small comfort until we were invited by DEFRA and the MMO in the UK to speak with them, all of us, not just Ireland now, but all of Europe, representatives of the fishing industry, and to be brought up to speed on their plans to allocate 43 massive areas around the island of England, Scotland, and Wales for marine protected areas. Now, what's changed from their first consultation was that they said the features that they had identified that were going to be protected now has expanded to the mud and the benthic community, the worms and maggots in the ground all around, which means they don't want any bottom contact gear, which is trawling, beaming, or seine fishing, or dredging. That's gone. And our
Right.
boats catch up to 80% of their fish inside that area during the year.
Patrick, what did we pay for and how did we pay?
So we paid for fish inside in UK waters. In return, as I said, we gave them a lot of our fish for that. Plus, we still allowed them to come into our waters to catch fish because fish move around, right? But now they can still come in to our waters. They're saying the environment needs to be protected and you can't come in. So we've paid our ticket to get in. We
Mm.
have allowed them to get into our attraction, and they now, through a loophole, is what I'd call it, and a change in what they were doing, are going to exclude us and our vessels from their waters. Now, the double whammy of that is the reason Barnier took my papers with him in his negotiations with the UK, and that was a thing called displacement, right? which means that boats that are fishing inside an area, if they can't fish there no longer, they leave and they go into another area. Now, how that impacts the boats is this. Boats fish traditional grounds for decades, even up to 100 years, because they're the most productive grounds you go to. That's where you catch the most fish, right? But if you're going to be moved from those productive grounds into less productive grounds, well, naturally, you're going to have to fish for twice as long, which means you're going to have twice the impact. So as I said to the UK, I said, but you're moving the problem. You're shifting from a place where you know that has survived because you've data that goes back 40 or 50 years, you know. Yes, it's not teeming with life, but there's no reason why if you stop trawling, that life will come back because of the substrate in the ground that's there. But you are going to move people off that ground into less productive ground with the same size of substrate, doing twice the amount of effort, which means, according to you, will do twice the harm. So then you'll have to look to protect that area. And there's no end to that where you'll be turning around to say, well, there's nowhere left for you to fish. The other side of it is that all the foreign boats that enter UK waters, we would be foreigners, including the Belgians, the Dutch, the Danish, the French, the Spanish that fish in UK waters, may now move. And they are coming to Irish and English waters because they don't have the fish in their own waters. So that means we could see an increase of boats coming into our water. We don't get more than 15% of the fish in our own waters. In hake, we have a 7% share. 7%. So you can imagine these boats are coming in. We have scientific advice this year that's giving zero catch advice because they're saying the stocks are not in a healthy state for cod in the Celtic Sea, for whiting in the Celtic Sea, and this year they've added haddock to the Celtic Sea. So our boats will not have an opportunity to fish in their own waters, and now they won't have an opportunity to fish in the other waters. This is catastrophic for us. So, just to bring back the figures, when we started the Brexit negotiations, there was 180 vessels fishing outside of Irish waters and in the deep in Irish waters in 2020. In 2024, after a voluntary decommissioning scheme, that number is down to 140. Now, with less fish and less opportunities, this is going to have the same impact as Brexit. So we're asking, well, what's going to be done? Because the reality is now we've lost even more fish and more access to ground. Where are we going to go? Who's going to come into ours? This turns the common fishery policy and all the rules and regulations on its head, as far as we're concerned. And we've been saying this for the last decade and saying how bad it is in the Irish industry. We see it around our coastline where fishing boats are disappearing from our vision. They're gone. They're disappearing. In our generation, we are losing our fishing industry. Yet, we have 12% of European waters, and we have well over 1.5 billion of fish being taken from our waters annually, and we get 180 million. So if we were told no more fishing inside the UK, then we have to see other boats allow other boats in on top of us again. It's just not sustainable. They're on about sustainability. That is not the definition of sustainability. And nobody's listening to us.
Who's making these decisions? Who's making these deals? Who's agreeing to these deals?
Well, the majority of Europe, we're only a small player in Europe. It's called quantitative voting, right? And the Commission, first of all, negotiate on behalf. Once the member states give them permission, the Commission do the negotiating, right? On our behalf. But there's eight other countries that have and need fishing rights in UK waters and in our waters. Remember what I said? They take 85%. They would have to give that up. And that means bad for them as well. But the problem is that I keep saying under international law, UNICLOS, under United Nations law, They're not allowed to do what they're doing to us. But we're not fighting it on the United Nations law. We're looking at hybrids in Irish law and European law, and we're the losers in it. And the losers, first of all, is the fishermen, and then it's you and everybody else. There was a program on today about Lennox's fish and chip shop in Cork, right? That was closing, and this
Yeah.
lad Cahill took it over, and he was saying that the price of fish has skyrocketed. The reason why that is because fish is getting scarcer because we're not allowed to catch it. And the other boats that come in and catch that are putting it into the back of a lorry and shipping it to their own country. I'll give you an example. Imagine if the United Emirates came in and started buying up our land and using our land to grow cattle and sheep and animals and everything else, but exported that produce back to their own country and left us with nothing. The last time that happened, we had a famine, and the UK took our corn, our wheat, and our animals when the potato crop, and we had a famine. Now, I'm not saying it's that now, but the same principle applies, and we don't seem to be getting any protection. It's easier to get rid of us. And that is crazy in an island nation that we don't have a fishing fleet that can compete and stand up and catch a fair share of fish in our own waters. And I cannot for the life of me understand why the ordinary Irish man and woman think this is okay. I find it incredible. I don't understand why people think it's okay for us as a nation to lose the right to fish in our own waters. And you have people championing it around villages and saying we must stop fishing. So that's where it is at the moment with me.
And Patrick as well, as you said, any say Irish boats are fishing in those in UK waters in now what are now going to be marine protected areas. They're going to be moving to a place that is less productive. If it's less productive, you're in an area where you can catch less fish. You're going to have to work harder, so you're automatically uh, on a loser there straight away. And from what you're saying too as well that the fact that you've got advice for zero catch for cod and had and sorry 7% for cod and zero for haddock, if I'm correct. Sorry, 0% for cod
Zero for haddock. Yeah,
and
zero
zero
for,
for haddock.
so that means, yeah, no fishing for those three species. We'll get a bycatch to allow us to catch some hake. But the hake, our share of the hake is 7%. So
Wow.
that's been halved under scientific advice since 2018. So we were getting around 5,500 tons in 2018, 2019. We're now getting 2,500 tons.
I have
So
a question.
yeah,
Who's paying for the scientific advice? Who's funding this scientific advice?
you and everybody else. So you're paying it through your taxes into
Yeah, but
the
who's paying?
European,
Who's commissioning? Who has employed these scientists?
the European Commission and the member states
So my next
are
question,
the advice. Yeah,
what is
are
our
the
MEPs doing and saying about this?
Well, in fairness to the MEPs, they've awoken to this, and we're going out again on the 1st to the 3rd of September to meet not only them but the Commissioner to raise these issues with him. And it's the entire Irish industry. Well, not the small boats, they're more akin to separating from ourselves, unfortunately, and going their own way, which I find very, very frustrating. We would like them to join us and put Ireland Inc. on the table first, and we can try and divide out the spoils between us afterwards. But there doesn't seem to be that willingness, unfortunately, in the current membership or leadership of the inshore, which is regrettable.
And there is differences between inshore and offshore fishing as regards the type of fish they can catch and the areas that they cover.
Yeah, well, not really. You can catch the same types of fish, maybe not as productive, and smaller boats you see are restricted by weather-wise. but they can go out into deeper water during the summer and stuff like that, so they can fish out there. But yeah, but they get half the quotas than the bigger boats. So I'll explain this now. People say, the small boats have less than the bigger boats. So I'll give an example. There are 2,000 small boats on the Irish Register. There is 140 larger boats. The smaller boats gets 5 ton of we'll say haddock to catch in a calendar month, every one of them, and the larger boats gets 10 ton. So if all the small boats go out and catch their full allocation, they will have 10,000 tons in a month. If the big boats go out and catch their full allocation, they will have 1,400. So there is more fish given to the inshore boats than to the larger boats. But the reason why they don't catch it is, like you said, Paul,
Yeah.
they are not equipped to catch it. They don't have. The reason why we have big boats and small boats is because the big boats go out into the deep ocean and catch fish out there, and the small boats don't, but they fish around the shores and the islands. And that's, a choice of a fisherman. There is no one stopping a small boatman from going and buying a big boat or joining the deck of a big boat. That's the way it's always been done. So when you hear of it being divided, that they're not getting enough, the actual facts and the reality of it is not bearing that out. I'll give you an example of allocation, right? So if you have a struggling builder, right, and he's on his own and he doesn't have the machinery, the cement mixers, the big ones, or he doesn't have the load alls, he's just a small man, he's got his toolkit and everything. But you don't have the government saying, well, because he's small, now we have to give him the contract to build the hospital rather than the company with 1,000 workers or with the equipment. That makes no sense. It's the same in fishing. We don't restrict anybody. They're given the same opportunities, well, half of them, and they would be very wealthy people if they caught what they were given to catch, but they don't have the gear to do it. And that's the reason why. So, like, it's not true. I call them lies. I call them their opinion, right, of where they are. It's just not true. And here's the funny part. In the last 20 years, the inshore numbers have increased, whereas the
Mm.
offshore numbers has been decimated. They've lost 62.5% of the vessels in the bigger category.
Mm.
So I don't understand why this is still portrayed in the media when I'm trying to represent both sides and be fair to everybody, but that's not coming across. And that damages us in Europe when there's separate voices going out to Europe saying different things. Ireland should be united under the one banner, and it is a case of, listen, none of us have enough fish. It's not right we're only getting 85%. It's not right that there's more boats coming into our waters to fish than there is Irish boats and that we're outnumbered. It's not right the amount of quota that's been taken from our waters annually, leaving us with less. It wouldn't happen in any other industry. It wouldn't happen in any other section of society that this would be allowed to happen. And it's destroying Ireland's fishing industry.
It's also destroying, it's also putting up the price of fish, as you said, but the fish shop in Cork. But it's also making it unaffordable for us to actually buy the fish
Mm.
and have it in our diets. It's also putting down the destroying the local communities, the local skills of fishermen, destroying the local economy and the coastal economies. And it sounds to me as if, how come Ireland is just sold the bad deal? How come, with the TCA deal, the Trade Cooperation Agreement between England and the EU, that deal was done, the deal expired, and then another deal was signed for 12 years, and it completely destroyed Ireland.
Yeah, and you've it. You've nailed it. The same deal, the same bad deal was just regurgitated again and left us in a shocking position. We still have to keep giving away our fish. But after that was signed, then we were told by the UK, by the way, what you paid for, you're not getting, because now we're going to call them where you fish marine protected areas. So you have to get out. So you've paid for something that you cannot access anymore. And we're asking, why are we still paying? Why don't we say, listen, if we can't have access to the waters, give us our fish back. We'll catch them in our own waters, or we'll catch them somewhere else. Do you know what I mean? And then we can sustain at least part of our fleet and get back our prawns and catch the fish in our own waters and tell them to leave our waters. Like if the deal now has been um, soured like that, why should we live up to a deal that's no longer in our benefit? We have to
Yeah.
ask these questions.
Mm.
Why is it happening? Roisin, it's very simple. The Irish people don't know or care about the oceans and the seas around them in regards fishermen. They don't care. They're not interested. Unfortunately, they go to Spain and France, and the fish there is fantastic. And I keep saying to people, but sure, that's our fish you're eating.
Yeah.
They might have caught it, but it's in our waters. They don't have this fish in their own waters. They have to go into either UK waters or Irish waters to catch this fish. Their grounds are too deep, first of
Mm.
all, for trawling. They just go off a cliff edge, right? And they're
Okay.
too deep. Once it's over 400 meters, you're not allowed to trawl there. So if you look at the amount of fish and different types of species of fish in the Mediterranean, but monk, hake, haddock, whiting, these fish they catch in other people's waters and bring them back to their own place, you know. Sole especially, 87% of the sole in 7F and G is taken by the Belgians. We're left with around 4 or 5%. And this is the reality that's happening. But Irish people have to decide, do you want the fishing industry? Stop listening to the bad mouthing of fishermen. They're ordinary, decent, hard-working family. Real hard life to go out there. You're missing birthdays, weddings, funerals, family occasions,
Yeah.
all for your trade. And you're not given the due respect and acknowledgement that's due. It's terrible.
Yes.
What is it you want to happen? And what is it you want the government and to do for the Irish fishermen?
Well, I think first of all, the government has put a man in place that's there to listen, and we have to give him a chance. That is Minister Timmy. So we have a good man in Minister Timmy Dooley. The government has assigned a specific minister for the marine and fisheries. So that is a huge step forward. He needs to be backed by our government 100% by not only his senior minister, but our Taoiseach and Taoiseach. And they have to say to Europe, this isn't right. They have to back the minister in his conversations with the new commissioner, who then has to
Mm.
bring it up the line to Ursula von der Leyen and say this, that this is not right. And we
Mm.
cannot wipe out Ireland's fishing industry so that our boats, our other countries can go in and fish there. We cannot allow the UK to change the agreement that we signed by slipping some other rule in afterwards. You know, it's not right. They need to do proper evaluations of what it's going
Mm.
to cost us, and we need to be compensated for that. That's what needs to happen. Um, we have other ideas as well too, Roisin, but I'll tell you that some other night.
So, Patrick
Absolutely.
Murphy, thank you so much for taking the time to come and on the Irish Political Roundup and talk to Paul and myself.
Absolutely, Patrick, and you give excellent insights as always. And in the next program, Roisin, we'll find out more about what this means for the Irish fishing industry and for consumers when they go to buy their fish in their supermarket or fishmonger, or when they're going out to get something to eat. What's that going to mean?
Patrick Murphy, thank you so
Yeah.
much indeed.
Thanks, lads. Thanks very much. Talk to you again soon.